What do you call a group of necromancers? Many Marcos. What's going on, YouTube? It is a Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we have our two golden vendors restart inside the Hollow City, inside of Cold Harbor. To go over the first, we start with Zanil, who has for us a brand new item, actually right at the tippy top. This brand new furnishing item, only for 2,000 gold, is probably an instant pickup in the sense that this just looks really cool. It's both a ladder and a structural piece. I think this is actually pretty good. I'm going to buy a couple right now just because we're here. I will tell you, though, that the items that are associated with these, the spikes, these other things, yes, I think this one is probably going to be the other best one, but that's really not that much of a gain. You can see here it's only a 10k average. You buy it for 8. These other ones, yes, there is a little bit of increase in value. This one's actually a decrease in value from its average. The majority of these really, though, see a big uptick around Halloween. We have a lot of Halloween-themed items that are very popular, but they're only specifically sold in that time period. So yes, these vampiric tables are fantastic. They go in tons of Halloween things. So if you plan to sell these, I would plan to sell them at the end of October. That way you can get the most amount of value from them, because you can see these are actually double their value. I'm just warning you that even though you're seeing double in value, or most of these actually have an increase, there are some that are not as good, like this Iron Maiden, and there are some that definitely have a decrease in value. But if you do want to buy these, which they're great too, sell them at the right time. There's going to be tons of housing contests. There might even be a ZeniMax sponsored one. As we get into Halloween, that's when these are going to see their biggest uptick. That's when you should try to offload these if your goal is profit. If you want to make a house that's going to enter those contests, definitely these items are going to be fantastic to do so. And next up, we're inside of Cyrodiil to go over our second golden vendor, the traditional golden vendor. You can see things are going pretty good for the blueberries. And if you ever need help finding this vendor, you go to our website, esohelper.com. And as always, we like to see what the first item is, and we start with Defiled. Now, Defiled comes from Lair of Marsalok, which is notoriously not fun to do. It has a 2 through 5 without a special effect, which we generally like to see, but it's 2 bars of stam, which is and then we have 2 bars of health, which is okay. When you take damage from a melee attack, you gain a corrupting aura for 5 seconds. It applies minor breach to all enemies within 8 meters of you, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 2974. Sets like these are hard to really pinpoint what's its best utilization. Hard to say. 2 bars of stamina, 2 bars of health is okay. Maybe you would use this on like an off tank to apply minor breach to all enemies within, a radius. Because the problem is that one, if you try to use this for PvP, you can already get minor breach through scribing skills and half a dozen subclassing skills. So not really good utilization for that. And 2 bars of stam's not really giving you a whole lot of value. And you have to take damage from a melee attack, which is problematic because that requires something to happen to you. And in PvP, generally, you want your proc sets to only be activated by things that you can control. So for me, this is a hard set. I'd say it's like an off-tank set that you may wear in some dungeon or trial, but I don't see you running it very often. It's not very synergistic. I'll still give it a 7 just because minor breach to groups of individuals can be helpful, and 8 meters is a large range. It's a lot of feet if you were to do the math. Not going to here because I'd embarrass myself. I'll give it a 7. Next up is Mother's Sorrow. Now, Mother's Sorrow used to be the Bee's Knees set. This set actually still sells fantastically well for gold. The problem is that generally people don't buy the gold version of it. Let's talk about what it is first, why. So it gives you max mag, crit chance, and then a ton of crit chance. It comes from Deshawn. Now, Deshawn is a base game zone. The set has been out for forever. Mother's Sorrow continues to sell exceptionally well because there's a lot of people out there who have old guides that recommend Mother's Sorrow, like Laws of Julianos, and then probably freaking Spindle Clutch as the generic first build starter set. And that's not to say that's a bad starter set, but those people are not buying a golden version of Mother's Sorrow. And it is still a fantastic set. I was actually expecting with the monomyth meta to see maybe a little more people start running Mother's Sorrow just to get guaranteed crit chances with their guaranteed, major and minor force. The problem is that we have so many subclassing passives, and you have Mundus Stones and all sorts of other things that you could do to increase your crit chance if it drops too low. So you really don't need it. You could switch races if you really wanted to affect crit and crit damage. So Mother Sorrow just doesn't see itself in this current meta. Its best utilization is probably still that first use starter set. And in that, I would probably give like an 8 or a 9. It's very hard to say where Mother Sorrow is. I'm sure there could be a meta in the future where Mother Sorrow sees its back and rise to fame again, because really all it is just crit chance. And that's not a bad thing to have. Like, you could get fantastic value out of that if you built around needing a ton of crit chance, because everything else you did was focused on crit damage. You know, you're a Khajiit, you got the Mono Myth, you're just pumping out maximum amounts of crit damage with all your other stuff. And then this set's only focus was to just give you that chance. So overall, we'll give it that, but that's why I think this is a weird set, because people will probably see a lot of sales for this, but then they might be confused why a golden version of it doesn't sell, because it's going to be sold to new players making starter sets. Next up is Frostbite. Now, I notoriously love Frostbite. When it first came out in the Blackwood expansion, I was all over being a Warden and returned my love to being a Warden. Why did it do that? This is an overland set, so it is sellable. It gives you weapon and spell, crit chance, weapon and spell, already a better 2 through 4, and increase your damage done with frost abilities by 8%, and increase your damage done against chilled enemies by 4%, increase your damage done against enemies afflicted with minor brittle by 2%. So this has seen quite a lot of utilization, and I thought with subclassing, we would really see a return to people running sets like Frostbite. I just don't think it's that 10 out of 10 set in that setup. You're going to see tons of people running all sorts of different builds right now. It really seems like we're not necessarily in the meta yet where people are making those Frost Warden subclassing builds. You will see some of them. I would say that this is easily a 9 out of 10 set. I love this set, and I think subclassing will only add further value to a set like this. Scribing, being able to also deal frost damage against other things, frost abilities. You can even stack this with like Hrothgar's Chill if you wanted to. There's just so many weird things that you can do with a set like this. It's exceptionally versatile, and the best thing is that it just does a lot. And is very synergistic with itself. I'm going to give it a 9. I think you're probably still going to see mostly PvP utilization with this, but this is a set that you could use for PvE, because there's nothing wrong with just building around frost. There's people who build around fire, and they do perfectly well for PvE. So I think this is a fantastic set. You should consider owning it, but I don't think you don't buy from the Golden Vendor. You can get this from Blackwood relatively cheaply. The average sale price of it on Xbox right now is 8.5K. Now, granted, that's probably like a blue or a purple one, probably closer to a blue, but even still, upgrade materials are exceptionally cheap right now. If you want to try a set like this, go ahead and buy it, but it is still fantastic. Next up is from Moon Hunter Keep. Fun fact, this was one of the most hated dungeons that I ever had when I used to farm it as a pug. Ridiculously annoying to try to go in there. When this was one of the first dungeons that came out that had a big power spike, but the set itself used to be fantastic. Is it still fantastic? Spoiler, it is not. Stam, weapon and spell stam recovery. Your light attacks made within melee range rend flesh, causing your enemy to bleed 1097, bleed damage instantly, and additionally every 2 seconds for 4 seconds. This effect scales off your weapon or spell damage. You can see we get a lot of value out of this, but the problem is that a set like this used to actually be really good for like bow sorks, from what I remember, or Nightblades, because I believe, if I remember correctly, because it was either bugged or it was changed back, many years ago, like 5 years ago, you used to just be able to use this on like a bow build, and then you could stack poisons and dots, and you could kill people at a distance, and it was really good. The problem is now it has to be done within melee range, which is problematic, because if you're trying to run a bow sork or a bow Nightblade, you probably don't want to be in melee range. And bleed damage just generally isn't as good as it used to be. All of that to say, yes, you could still run this on a werewolf, but like 90% of ESO sets can run a werewolf. You want to make a frost werewolf? You want to make a crit damage werewolf? Do you want to make a defiling werewolf who gives everybody, minor breach? You could probably do that. So unfortunately, it does not really have a home. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It definitely does have the ability to run and sort of like up close melee builds, but so can most sets, and they're just easier ways to do that, unfortunately. Next up from Elden Hollow 2 is Chokethorn. Its 1 piece is Magicka Recovery, but it's 2 piece when you use a heal ability with a cost, which is such a weird proc. So basically, when you do something, you have a 33% chance to summon a sapling that heals you or an ally for 1659 health over 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds, and it scales off your maximum Magicka, or Stamina. So this is a really interesting bonus that you can get. It's just one of those support sets that you'll see used in certain types of content. If you've ever been in Cyrodiil, occasionally you'll see Chokethorn pop up. If you've ever been in random groups of individuals, you'll randomly see Chokethorn pop up. It is probably it's a great support set. I don't know if I would argue that it's fantastic because generally healers don't need to heal, and its heal is kind of weird how it targets. It definitely is one that benefits from add-ons that tell you when it's about to happen. So kind of weird. And generally you don't need that overheal for support characters. I'll still give it an 8 out of 10. It is a shoulder, so potentially is worth getting if you have a bunch of AP, maybe you want to be a support character in the future, because you don't really want to roll your one mystery key on the vendor that has Eildon Hollow as an option because you're just rolling for base game sets. The majority of players will have this, but for those of you who don't, and you may see yourself being support in the future, maybe you grab, a light, medium, or heavy piece of this, depending on what you're going to do. If you think you're going to do it, from a PvE perspective, I think probably medium is probably the one that you go with, maybe heavy, just depending, because you're going to go for that 5-1-1 still, but it's up to you. Not got indifferent on if I think it's worth recommending. Next up from Banished Cells 2, probably also a set that you really don't want to be rolling for, is Maw of the Inferno. Thank you, by the way, Blaze, if you see this while I'm, thanks for the subscribe while we're recording this offline. Maw of the Inferno is interesting. So it's 1 piece, weapon and spell damage, 2 piece. When you deal damage with a light or heavy attack, you have a 33% chance to summon a fire-breathing Daedroth for 15 seconds that deals 299 flame damage every 2 seconds. The Daedroth can be summoned once every 15 seconds, and it scales off your weapon or spell damage. So this is one of the monster sets that I think saw a big uptick in experimentation, especially after subclassing, because now everybody can have Haunting Prey as the Daedric Curse morph. People are building all sorts of crazy pet builds. If you go into Cyrodiil, you're going to see some Daedroths every so often, like the fire-breathing alligator things that breathe fire. Very popular. I don't really think they're as effective as people think they are. I think a lot of times people who run pet builds are really relying on people not tap targeting them and just getting overwhelmed by pets. All that to say, though, I think for PvE, it still has pretty good utilization. I don't really know how I would scale this as a PvP set because I see it frequently, but I don't find it super effective. But the build itself that it's run in, I think is still pretty decent because it just throws pets at your enemies. And they're just, the pets that you can get with subclassing are pretty versatile. So all that to say, if you're building around it, you could probably build it as an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I don't want to give it a 9 because that feels a little bit exaggeratory. But it's hard to deny that if you go into Grey Host, you're going to see it pretty frequently. You go into Battlegrounds, you're going to see it pretty frequently. So it definitely does have a place. I just don't know how highly I put it in the meta. And subclassing, to be fair, you should be seeing the max amount of value with a set like this. This should be its peak of peaks right now, but it's being overshadowed by the crit damage and crit chance meta. So all of that to say, some interesting items this week. Again, we had some really cool items. Frostbite is a really good set to highlight. Mother's Sorrow is a really good set to highlight. But realistically, for purchases, the housing vendor has some great items. If you find yourself either wanting to make gold or if you want to enter into any sort of Halloween themed contest, I don't know if ZeniMax is going to do an official one, but a lot of people will be doing unofficial ones still with crown rewards, gold rewards. Probably one of the best weekends you could ask for. Literally, the items there are going to be double their value, as we saw for those vampiric items. And we have that new item there, the cage, that looks really cool. So consider those options. Make sure you get the price checker in the comments below, which is also an add-on if you're interested. Thank you guys so much again for watching. As always, we're doing our quick 3 giveaway drawings. All you need to do to enter is leave a comment and like on the video. Second thing is just make sure you're subscribed. We're less than 50 subs away from our next subscriber goal. And the third thing is look for hidden word to be flashed upon the screen. We hide 1 word per month. If you're the first person to find and comment it, you will win. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. I'll catch you tomorrow, and I'll see you there. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.